Today's tutorial is of an iPhone 8 Plus front screen replacement. Tools you need are located in the description below. Let's begin. First, using a pentalobe screwdriver at the bottom of the iPhone, remove the two pentalobe screws. Next step is we need to get the heat gun and slowly move around the outside of the screen and heat that up. Once we've done that, as you can see with my pry tool, I slowly move it. I just put it in millimeters and I slowly move it around the outside of the screen to loosen the adhesive that is holding the screen down. Once we loosen that, that'll actually make the actual screen to lift up and flip over a lot easier. So just be patient. You don't need to rush it. Once you lift that screen over, it flips open like a book. And with the plate at the bottom, using a Phillips head screwdriver, remove the 4 screws. And lift the plate up with your fingers. Next thing is using a tripoint screwdriver. At the top, remove the plate holding down the cable underneath it. And at that point, this is when I do disconnect the battery. Use a non-conductive spudger or tool to actually lift those cables up. You can even use your fingernail, that's fine. I'm just using a spudger so you guys can see it on the actual camera. Now you've got the screen disconnected. The first thing to do is, at the top of the screen, remove, using a Phillips head screwdriver, the plate holding down the front selfie camera, ear speaker and microphone. This very simply comes off, and then you take off with your fingers the actual plate. Flip over the actual selfie camera, then pick out the actual ear speaker. Now this is a part where you need to be careful. You just don't want to damage the actual flex cable that has a microphone assembly on there. Look, if you do damage it, it's a very cheap part to buy, but to save you the actual hassle, just be patient. As you can see, I've heated the other sides. It was fairly cold when I was doing this, so obviously heat is better with the adhesive. It loosens it up a bit more, and then you can move towards slowly prying it up. And as you can see, this is where the proximity sensor is. So you slowly lift that up. Once again, just be very patient. And that lifts up. It looks fairly complex, but it's just literally peeling something off. So take your time with it. And now you'll see that there's plastic brackets where the selfie camera is sitting to line up and the actual proximity sensor. Some people don't move it over. Look, I just like to actually move it over because Apple have put that in there for a reason. This one sometimes can be fairly tricky. And most of the time when I try to pick this off, it'll just flick off somewhere, as it has done now. Now we need to remove the plate on the back of this screen so we can move it over to the new screen. So using a tri-point screwdriver, it's simple. Take those screws out. All up, there's 5 screws. And at the bottom, holding the home button down, using a tri-point screwdriver, remove those screws. Once again, all the tools and parts can be found in the description below. Also, like and subscribe. The good reason for liking this video is that once you do get your tools and parts in the mail, you can go back to your history and find this video. to use as a reference. Now, using a Phillips head screwdriver, the final screw holding down the back plate, take that off, and we peel this off. Now, this is fairly simple. You can't really do damage, but always be careful. Sometimes those cables get knotted in there and a bit congested, but that's a normal thing. I usually take away that plastic little sticker and just essentially throw it away. Now at the bottom, just if you can see very closely, the home button flex needs to disconnect from that LCD flex there. Be very careful, you don't want to damage the home button here. I've done it fairly quickly, but just remember I've actually fixed hundreds of these phones, so after a while you get used to it. Just be very patient. Now, as you can see, using a heat gun on the other side, I heated up the back home button where it'll just eventually peel up and fall out there. Now, everything's in reverse order. I'm actually using the same screen. As this screen, there was nothing really wrong with it. So we put that home button back in. We flip over the home button flex to connect back to that LCD connector hanging off the LCD screen there. And now we put it back in place, make sure everything's lined up. So when you do put the screws in the plate on top, it sits flush. There we go. I like to put the plate on at this point. Line up those screw holes on the side with the plate and everything should be fine. So now we can proceed with putting the back plate that holds down the home button. Put in those tri-point screws. There should be about 4 of them. And the Phillips head screw at the bottom there. Pretty strange that that's the only Phillips head screw there, and the rest are tri-points. On the side, continue with those tri-point screws. And just put those brackets, those plastic brackets. You can even glue them down if you want. And then put the flex cable on. It looks like some type of complex origami thing to put down, but it is very simple as it's already been folded in the right place. So you just put everything down as you can see in the video here. Then you put that ear speaker back on, which allows the selfie camera to fold back. And if you've put everything in the right place, that selfie camera will just fit snug into the plastic holder there, where you can then put the plate on the back. When I first saw this, I thought it was very complex, but the great thing is that, as I said before, it is folded in place, so it does help you in regards to replacing it. Now, putting those Phillips head screws back on is fairly simple. Essentially, once again, everything in reverse. Now that we've done that, I always like to put the top flex connector that goes to the ear speaker on first. I find it just easier when you've got a bit more room to move there. There is no rule on what to put down first, and then the bottom ones. Once that's down, this is the point where I like to test the screen. And there we go. That's loaded up. Obviously I've cut out that loadout time. Now this is a point where I turn it off and do the final assembly of the plates, and then securing the screen down. Using a Phillips head, we just put in those 4 screws. Using a tripoint, we secure down the top plate. There's only one way it can go in, so don't worry if you think you're going to put it in back to front, it just won't fit. Now I fold down the screen. Now watch at the top, I put in those teeth at the top there. You can't really see it, it's hard to show obviously because it's under the screen. So I usually go from the top down, click it in place, put in those pentalobe screws at the bottom to secure the screen down. Once again, finally double check. Please don't hesitate to like and subscribe, as it will save the video, so when you do have the parts, you can watch it later on. Thanks again, guys.